Okay, so shalom everybody, and my name is Yair, and I'm based here in Philadelphia. And I work here. I live in outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs, and I belong to an organization called Hope for Israel Alliance, and it's basically an international alliance. And all that we're trying to do is to focus on bringing them back home as soon as possible now, and also fighting anti-Semitism in any way that we can. And there's members from all over the world. And we're really lucky to host today Roz Rothstein, and Julie Paris is going to moderate with me. And Julie, you're going to introduce Roz, but first of all, for the audience, thank you everybody for taking, I know that it's the middle of the week and everybody's tired, and you're joining at 8 p.m. So we appreciate it. We think it's going to be a very interesting and insightful session. We're really looking forward to hear from Roz. And just again, for those who joined in the last few minutes, it's going to be, the three of us are going to be talking, and the way that you communicate with us, please write down your comments and your questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as much questions as possible. So, first, before we start, I do want to acknowledge that it's a difficult day for all of us, Jews and Israelis. We just heard the news that at least three bodies of the kidnapped people were brought back by the IDF to Israel. So I just wanted to acknowledge Maya Goren, Oren Goldin, and Tomer Achimas. Zichronam lebracha. And, I wanted to tell you that I'm going to start by introducing Julie. So Julie Paris she has an amazing bio, and I'm not going to read all of it. But she's the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director of StandWithUs. And as such, what she does is basically working across 4 different states. And she's been doing so much before the war and after October 7th, raising funds and bringing critical resources to communities, how to fight anti-Semitism, support Israel, especially through their very unique educational model. But beyond what she's doing, I think that, I've known Julie now from the beginning of the war, and she's a fighter. She lives in Pittsburgh. And the things that she has been doing, I hear about her all the time, and I see what she's doing. I mean, she goes every weekend in Pittsburgh, downtown, rallies to bring them home, to support Israel, to fight anti-Semitism. We had several rallies here in Philadelphia, including a big one with Shapiro and another senator in December, and she was a powerhouse of helping us build this event. And she's been doing just so much things in terms of education and filming screens of the screen before silence at the JCC, and fighting legal issues with the University of Pittsburgh and Lehigh University, and arranging so many vigils. And she's really unbelievable. So thank you, Julie, for joining us, and please go ahead.
So first of all, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's great to be with everyone. And if I'm doing a lot, then you're doing times 100. I watch you and what you're doing, and I'm really blown away by your activism, your passion, your determination in the Philadelphia area, and the types of programs and a number of groups that you bring together at this critical time. So thank you for all you're doing, and thanks to everyone on the call for participating. So as Yair mentioned, my name is Julie Paris. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for StandWithUs. StandWithUs uses a very unique model, which Roz will touch on shortly. But one of the key successes in our plan is that we have a model that works, that we bring from one city to the next. So we have 15 different departments that we work with, and all of our departments collaborate with one another to be successful. So if there's a legal issue that's happening on campus, we lean into our campus staff. If there's a community issue regarding Holocaust education, we work together with our Holocaust team on that. So there's just a lot of very creative ways that StandWithUs uses one another and leans into each other to create a successful way to engage the Jewish community, the Zionist community, the Israeli community in fighting anti-Semitism and supporting Israel through education. It's important to note that we are completely non-political. We don't take political stances on anything. So no reason to ask any questions about politics, because we won't be able to respond to those. But we are very, very happy to be a partner in the work that you are all doing through different organizations, through your synagogues, through your schools, to be more effective. We want to train you, empower you, and engage you to be as successful as possible in these challenging times. Now, we're in the summer, So there might seem to be a little bit of a lull in the Philadelphia area. We know that's not true, but we are gearing up for the fall. We are gearing up with the expectation that we will see anti-Israel activism on campuses. And we can speak a little bit more about that in our work on campus. But I won't want to take up any more of your time because it is really my honor and pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of Stand With Us, Roz Rothstein. She's the daughter of Holocaust survivors, and she and her husband, Jerry, along with community leader Esther Renzer, sought to strengthen Israel's image by empowering Israel supporters around the world with innovative educational materials, conferences, fellowships, campaigns, missions to Israel, social media, educational videos, and programs. Since the inception of Stand With Us 23 years ago, the Forward has twice named her one of the 50 most influential Jews in America, and the Jerusalem Post has twice named her as one of the most 50 influential Jews in the world. And she is also a personal role model of mine. So without further ado, Roz, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Julie, for that warm welcome and for all the work you do. And Yair, thank you for everything you're doing. It's so important at this time. So ask away. I'm here.
So I'll actually ask the first question. Thank you, Julie. And, before this all happened, October 7th, I personally wasn't, I'm busy with work and my young two kids. I told you about one of them, COVID boy. And, I wasn't very involved in the Jewish community and different organizations. Of course, I heard about ADL and about the Jewish Federation and a few others, but I never felt that Stand With Us is a powerful, giant organization that is doing so much. After October 7th, when I started getting involved and seeing, we all keep seeing the name of Stand With Us with pretty much everything related to education, supporting Israel, anti-Semitism. It sounds like this organization has been doing so much and maybe even transformed in the last 9 months or so. I'd like to ask you, first of all, because you are the founder and creator of this very important organization, maybe you can just give us 5-10 minutes, tell us a little bit about what led you to create this organization and a little bit about the history and how it has evolved. And I know it's hard to do in 5 to 10 minutes, but just to give us some background information about you and the organization.
So you know how you, on October 7th, felt like you suddenly had a calling and suddenly there was pressure and you needed to get involved immediately. Lots of people felt the way that you felt. And that's how it felt 23 years ago for me. And my husband, Jerry, who's a co-founder, and Esther Renzer, there were 3 of us that got together at the time. So I'll just take you on a little journey so you understand that it's not so dissimilar to what we're looking at today. So you remember the Second Intifada? It was very, very traumatic, very violent. There were people exploding themselves, Palestinians exploding themselves in pizzerias and in cafes, and there were snipers shooting. So I had a family practice. I was personally a family therapist. I had a big practice. I was busy. I was raising kids, and I had a job already. I had a job, everybody, and then I realized there was this horrific. I'm also the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors, as Julie said. So I have a certain perspective. We have, children of survivors, grandchildren of survivors. We're a little bit more suspicious, maybe, than the rest of everybody. We can hear that anti-Semitic dog whistle a little sooner than everybody else, just because, we grew up with all this information, so we can hear it, we get it. So here we have raging Second Intifada in Israel, where people are getting murdered on the streets. And I assumed, having my job, my husband had his own advertising agency, very successful, that we assumed that there would be organizations that would come forward to explain what was going on in Israel. Because the media was giving out of context information, much the way that you get it today. So when you get upset because you read an article that leaves out, the story, Israel's story, or what happened first, that's what was going on 23 years ago as well. So there was a big need for an organization to take the helm and start explaining what we were looking at in Israel, what came first, what this terrorism is about, what the conflict, what's the history, what's the Jewish roots. I mean, just the whole story was missing from the news. And it was really nobody's fault. It was that every organization has their own mission. So if you fight cancer, that's your mission. You fight cancer. You don't start explaining what's going on in Israel. So every Jewish organization, all the big ones, already had a job. So that's what they were doing. But I thought wrongly, and I had been involved in Jewish work my whole life. I was a leader as a kid in B'nai Akiva, a youth movement. I was involved in the JCC locally, and I was a leader there. I was on board of directors all over Los Angeles. I truly believed that there would be organizations with major funding that would come forward and fight this war for hearts and minds. And I waited because I made the assumption that this was going to be picked up by major organizations. But then something happened. In March of 2001, baby Shalhevet Pas was murdered in her stroller. She was in a stroller in Hebron with her two parents, and a sniper shot her in the forehead and murdered her on the spot. And there was no voice, there was no outcry, there was barely any media, and barely any explanation of, again, what we're concerned about, the context. And so it was like, by that time, so now the Intifada began September of 2000, and now it's March of 2001. Okay, so it's clear to me that maybe nobody is coming forward to take this role of fighting for hearts and minds. And then two months later, this happened. Kobe Mendel and Yosef Ishran, two young teens, played hooky from school one day in the hills of Tekoa. They were caught by Palestinian teenagers, and they were tortured and barbarically murdered. So they had to be recognized by their teeth. It was in that moment, following the murder of Shalhevet Pas, basically three children that were targeted for murder, that it became clear that nobody is coming and that the buck stops here. So we had to learn more. This is when I met Esther Renzer. This is when my husband and I said, enough is enough. We at the time had a son similar in age. He was 15, similar in age to the two boys that were murdered. And we could imagine him playing hooky from school one day, and God forbid this happening in our family. So if you don't like where I live, let's have a conversation. Let's not kill each other's children. Anyways, it was 2 weeks later, we called an emergency meeting in our home and invited every organization that was busy in the Los Angeles area, including the Board of Rabbis and ADL and Simon Wiesenthal and Federation, everybody we could think of. We invited rabbis from every denomination. We wanted to be completely inclusive and had the conversation. Of course, I served them dinner first because that is what we do. And then right after dinner, I asked the question, is anything going on? Does anybody here have a strategy? We just lost 2 more children in Israel, and it's very unclear how this is being interpreted, and the conversation is skewed, and Israel is almost being blamed for the murders of its children. And it was clear that evening that this issue of mission statement, the mission statement, every organization has a mission statement. And if they're really good, they stick to their mission statement. And so that night we realized there was a need for an organization that would, deal with these very issues and fight the battle for hearts and minds. And that is when we began. Now, I would be lying if I told you we had an immediate plan from the beginning and we knew exactly what we were going to grow into. We did not. But what we did know, just like you knew when you woke up on October 7th, we knew something had to be done. And so we began to evolve. And we dealt with the most difficult issues first, second, third. And this is how this organization has evolved. And now, as Julie says, we're on 6 continents. We have social media that is leading in the field. We're working on high school campuses and college campuses. We're on middle schools with curriculum, where we have a legal team that is growing all the time and doing fantastic work. And this has been 23 years of work. And I am so grateful to all of our partners who have helped us grow, whether they're funders or whether they're tremendous activists like the 2 of you, who have it as their passion to make a difference in the world and say, Hineni, here I am to help. Because without us right now, we're going to have a real problem. But with us, we can meet this challenge.
So, Roz, as this really speaks to me. I often look back at my social media and I'll get memories from 10 years ago, from 15 years ago. And I find myself that I was sharing Stand With Us social media posts about anti-Semitic incidents that were happening. And I'm saying 2012, 2015, and I was sounding the alarm as well, saying, everyone wake up, look what happened to a Jewish person in New York. Why isn't anyone covering this terror attack in Israel? So I really respect the work that, I'm just so honored to be part of this work. And I'm so grateful that Stand With Us was founded to lay the groundwork for the kind of work that is so desperately needed today. And that leads me into my next question. So as Yair mentioned, maybe not everyone was as familiar with Stand With Us, potentially outside of social media. I think most people were familiar with our social media, but not necessarily familiar with the breadth and the depth of our work. So I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about post-October Stand With Us. How has our organization evolved? How have we grown to meet the challenges? And what are some of those challenges that we're seeing that we never saw in the past?
Okay, so it's a very, very good question because things did change on October 7th. It was shocking. It was shocking. Nobody could have predicted this. So as I said, we grew and we grew over the 23 years. We developed all these locations, these departments, these successful campaigns, the way we do business, helping students, reaching hundreds of thousands of students each year with the work that we do. And then came October 7th. And I would say that it was shocking what happened after October 7th with the rise in anti-Semitism. It wasn't like a slow rise and we've got a problem. It was an immediate insanity rise. It was quite in your face and almost pushed you physically. And if you weren't paying attention, then everybody saw it. So what happened was we had built the infrastructure. It was busy and it was moving in a trajectory, very, very positive and growing all the time. And then certain departments that Stand With Us started to take a tremendous amount of pressure. And those departments are social media, legal, high school, and campus. So those 4 departments suddenly needed to grow in size in a very big way. Our legal department was certainly doing great work, but it was inadequate in terms of the needs. The cases that were coming to us were times 10 from what we had before October 7th. The kids needed all kinds of support, high school and campus. They were calling our staff regularly, telling them stories that would curl your hair, whether they were physically attacked or discriminated in a classroom, stories that were meeting every kind of stereotype of anti-Semitism, whether it was from student groups that were anti-Semitic rallies that were supporting Hamas and having, you know, the flag of Hezbollah or Hamas, or getting violent, getting violent, people locked in a library. I mean, you all heard these stories. And then eventually with the encampments, the paths of people like Jewish people or non-Jewish people who were Zionists, if you disagreed with the people in the encampment, your path literally could be blocked. So all of this being illegal. So it's very interesting that it was able to continue for a period of time on many universities, but that's another story. How it changed was just a tremendous amount of pressure on those 4 departments. So we needed to grow immediately. And it's funny, it's lucky, and I'm grateful. I thank God all the time that people understood that they needed to help us at that time. They saw this is the right organization doing the work that we need right now. Let's invest in them. Let's support the work that they're doing. They need more people on campus. They need more social media staff. You know, we've had 1.5 billion interactions on social media only since October 7th. And so the growth of our social media has been so crazy that of course we needed to ramp up the numbers of social media people and experts in the field. And so those are the 4 departments that really took the heaviest loads immediately after October 7th.
So this is a follow-up question, and both you and Julie were talking about social media. You commented on one of the 4 being the social media. And Julie and you are going to talk pretty soon about education, schools, because so much of what you're doing is so tremendously important, because we see all that Hamas and, you know, propaganda trying to infiltrate into schools. So I think that that's so important. But before that, I wanted to ask you a question that is more close to my heart. Until a couple of months ago, when there were still students in campuses, we all saw the campuses and the anti-Semitism and the encampments, etc. It calmed down through the summer. Probably it's going to come up, you know, start again soon in the fall. But in the last few months, since that calmed down, many of us, and I'm a physician, and I see that several people in the audience here are physicians as well, have really noticed something that is happening. And I can tell you that I know pretty much every physician that I know in every health system, in every city, California, New York, Philadelphia, including my personal, you know, all the institutions around me, we see this. We see that people, I'll give you an example. And I'm giving you this example because I have a practical question. What do we do when we see something like this? So for example, in one of the hospitals in Center Philadelphia, there's an OBGYN physician assistant that since October 7th is basically lies and nonstop social media, how IDF raped the Palestinian women and how there was no such thing of the Hamas raping the Israelis on October, nothing, and lies and horrible incitement and hatred. And she is a person that is a physician assistant, you know, touching women, dealing, helping with labor and delivery, treating people, including a Miss Levine or an Israeli person from North Philadelphia. And this is just a small example to basically explain that this is happening all around us. And these are healthcares. When we see this social media, we still don't know exactly what to do. Sometimes we report to HR, but they say, well, it's their personal accounts. Do you, based on the tremendous growth of social media, do you have any advice or any thoughts about what's happening on social media, how to battle this?
It's a very good question. I would document everything because oftentimes people put something up and then they take it down. If you see something that is really disturbing, you should document, you should take a screenshot and make sure you have a record of it. Even though people may say to you, oh, well, this is their own right, their own personal. If you complain enough, if enough people bring this complaint, they will need to deal with it, because even though it is the right of people to post, you know, almost anything, not quite everything, but a lot, you can go pretty far with your own opinions, and you can even lie, because that's considered an opinion. Still, I would document everything, and if enough people complain about it and show the evidence, the HR departments may want to deal with it in some way, and they will have to get their own attorneys and deal with it and figure out how they can. Look, if enough patients are uncomfortable because they feel at risk by this person who's posting lies or threats or whatever it is that they're posting, they're going to have to deal with it.
And I would also encourage people to fill out our intake form. So even for something as simple as a fellow doctor posting on their social media page, I think it's worth documenting even from our end. We like to be able to keep track so that if you do report it to HR, we can make recommendations, even without taking legal action. I'll throw our incident report form into the chat in just a few minutes. But anything that you have an issue of concern with, our legal team will examine it. We won't always give you necessarily the answer that you want, but we will give you our advice and our recommendation on steps that you may take. Sometimes those steps might be, as Roz mentioned, reaching out to administrators, expressing your concern, encouraging hospital administrators specifically, but also if these issues are in universities or within your own companies, encouraging administrators and the heads of these hospitals and organizations to add anti-Semitism bias training into the anti-discrimination training that already exists within the infrastructure of the institution. So you spoke specifically about hospitals. We actually are working directly with the American Jewish Medical Association. We did a study with them where we studied over 1,000 doctors who filled out our surveys, and the results were shocking. I have a presentation that I'd be happy to share at another time with you, but the results really showed that hospitals have been remiss in addressing anti-Semitism, in including the Jewish community and Jewish identity in any sort of training, and have often missed telltale signs of anti-Semitic acts by other doctors. And the results show that Jewish doctors feel uncomfortable. Jewish medical students feel uncomfortable, and even Jewish patients often express discomfort at things that are being said and done. So I do think it's very, very important to document it. And any questions that come up in our situation, it starts with an incident reporting form. It starts with keeping track and documenting so that if we do see that we have legal action, if we do want to reach out with a letter from the Stand With Us legal team or from me as regional director, encouraging this kind of educational training or encouraging some sort of punishment for individuals that are perpetuating a false narrative publicly or on their social media, that we can help to make those kinds of recommendations. So I'll put the incident reporting form into the chat, and that is to be used for any type of incident. So whether it's in a middle school, whether it's in a hospital, and that's the fastest and most effective way that we can start to help you to address the issues, to empower you, to encourage you, and to give you any sort of support that you may need to bring about effective and hopefully positive change within these kinds of institutions.
Okay, so remember, remember the screenshots, document the incident that's troublesome. And then there is this one more thing. And thank you, Julie, for pointing out the incident report mechanism that we have on our website. You know this intuitively. This is a time to organize. So this is a time for us to come together. It's like an emergency. So you need to know the other side is coming together all the time, and they are, they have an agenda, and this is, whether it's DEI, kind of ignoring the threats or the complaints that they receive from Jewish staff or from patients. It's our job to make sure that we are so clear, that we organize, that we have a voice. So this is that time. It's an urgent matter that we come together. So coming together is going to be very important, whether you're in medicine or in the library or you're a rabbi. And by the way, we have something called Rabbis United. which brings together Zionist rabbis of every denomination. We need this safety umbrella for every kind of field now. We need a safety umbrella so that whether it's people in medicine or people in law, that you know you're not alone, and that there are other people who are experiencing these kinds of threats or these kinds of incidents or this kind of anti-Semitism. If you feel like it's not fair, it's probably not fair. If it's not right, it's probably not right. And so we need to organize. We need to not be afraid to do that now.
So along those lines, just a few things I wanted to encourage you, whatever profession you may be in or whatever interest group you may be involved in, it's entirely possible that there's a Jewish affinity group associated with it. So if you are a doctor and you're interested in getting involved with the newly formed American Jewish Medical Association, I encourage you to do that. If you're a professor, consider getting involved with organizations like Scholars for Peace in the Middle East and the Academic Engagement Network. Students can get involved in programs like Stand With Us. There are many, many ways that we can come together to be stronger, but we need to be leaning into each other and making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. If the resources are already there, you might as well take advantage of it and not feel like you're already starting over. So one of the things that we will do when reaching out to, say, campus administrators to address issues of concern about encampments, we will send a letter to hundreds of campus administrators, personalized to them, but with exactly the same messaging. So they are hearing from us the kinds of recommendations that we hope that they will implement to protect Jewish students, Jewish Zionist and Israeli students on campus, and create a campus that is free of hostility and division. So these are the kinds of letters that may already be created for whatever group or institution that you're involved in, and we can help to direct you in that way. Another piece that I'll talk just very briefly about has to do with things that we've been fighting since October 7th in local communities, including outside of the Philadelphia area, and those are ceasefire resolutions. Anti-Israel activists are constantly challenging us in new and unfortunately creative ways. And as Roz mentioned, they are very well organized. They are very well funded. Students for Justice in Palestine had a toolkit out nationally on October 8th. They were ready to go with pro-Hamas protests on that date. We also have to be organized. So when it comes to things like ceasefire resolutions in city councils, in county councils, we fight these tooth and nail. We have toolkits available. Our staff will train community members on how to create mass campaigns, letter writing, phone calls, developing relationships with your city council members, knowing who your elected officials are so that they know that you know who to call, and showing up and speaking out. Even just showing up at meetings now, even before anything shows up, whether it's the school board meeting or city council, having a Jewish representative or a Zionist or Israeli representative sitting in the room, making sure we have a seat at the table is so, so important. So just something, there's so many ways that you as individuals can make a difference, and we are here to support you. Obviously, we can't be everywhere, but we can offer the skills and the training that we have, and we can pass it on to you so that you can do this job wherever you are. So I just wanted to speak briefly about one of the areas that Roz mentioned, that we have seen an explosion of anti-Semitism and a demand for our work, and that has to do with our K-12. Our K-12 division has seen incredible, sadly, growth. That means anti-Semitism has creeped in to our kindergartners' classrooms. We are fighting back through a network of teachers in a grassroots effort to respond effectively to things like teachers' unions implementing anti-Israel resolutions into their work. So some of you may be aware that the National Educators Association, which is the largest teachers union in the country, is based in Massachusetts. They had several new business items on their agenda that were very, very anti-Israel. We found out about this a few months ago, thanks to our work with the grassroots teachers who we are involved in, who are members of NEA. We also found out that the NEA conference was scheduled to be in Philadelphia over July 4th weekend. So we started reaching out to our contacts in Philadelphia, the Federation, ADL, and other organizations to ask them if they'd heard anything about this and figure out a plan moving forward on how we can constructively engage with NEA leadership to try to prevent these resolutions from passing, because they will have a direct impact on the way that our children are taught and what tools our teachers are using in the classroom and how they're allowed to teach. So we formed a coalition of Jewish organizations, sent a letter to NEA leadership asking for a meeting. Not surprising, we didn't hear back from them. That happens sometimes. Our next step for Stand With Us was to organize a counter rally against these new business items. So we organized a counter rally. We organized a letter writing campaign, and we showed up at the Philadelphia Convention Center on July 3rd with signs and posters, and about 150 of you were there to represent. At the same time, there was a pro-Hamas, pro-resolution, I guess I could say pro-MBI resolution group that had gathered. And they had their own protests going on. In this particular case, we got pretty lucky that there were actually more of us than there were of them. Our messages were, we show our faces, stop indoctrination, allow education, keep politics out of the classroom, and many, many other slogans. Unfortunately, we don't really know yet what the results of our work are, because the following day, and I don't think it had anything to do with our work, the NEA went on strike, and they have not yet voted on those resolutions, but we are anxiously awaiting that. And why is that important? It's important because we brought to light these new business items. Without the relationships with teachers who are involved in this union, we would have never even known that the resolutions were on the table. We got media exposure, everyone from CNN to Fox News to local networks engaged in understanding. People had not heard about this, and they were outraged. So that's just really one example. We've seen very, very similar situation at the American Federation of Teachers. They are having their conference right now in Houston, Texas, and we organized a similar model there. There's been some discrepancies in the results of their votes on similar resolutions. So we won't have the results of that confirmed quite yet, but they should be out soon. But these are just some of the ways that we're working to fight back, both locally and nationally, and bringing our kind of model of what we believe is both proactive and reactive educational resources to communities.
What's so important, Julie, is you can see that in every field, potentially every field, there is this push, and then there must be the pushback. And so people are suffering, and they're feeling this, suddenly, who are my friends, and do I have any support in this environment? And this is that moment where everybody needs to work together to stand up tall and say, no, not in my field. That's not going to go over here very well. So, but no, everybody needs to know this is a time for your antennas to be up. October 7th really changed everything. You might have called everybody paranoid if it was before October 7th, but after October 7th, from what we see, from our point of view, everything is escalated. And all these anti-Semitic campaigns and this push and pulling down posters. Imagine pulling down the posters of kidnapped children. Why would anybody do that? I mean, what we've seen is just appalling in terms of this anti-Semitic push. So this is that moment where everybody listening has an opportunity to get involved in whatever profession you are in and really keep your antennas up now.
So amazing comments by both of you. Thank you for that. I'm going to start asking, because there's a lot of really good questions and comments from the audience. And I'm going to start by combining two questions of Eve and Jill. Jill is actually a close friend and amazing activist here in Philadelphia. So the question is kind of similar. We're talking about all the people who hate us and spread the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism. And we know just last week we hosted in our webinar Einat Wilf, who basically the whole session, the whole hour was talking about how anti-Zionism, the hate of Israel is, and the call for non-existence of Israel is really the new anti-Semitism that has always been there. It's just every few years or decades, it's unmasking itself. This time it's the hatred towards Israel that we don't see anywhere else. We don't see all this anger and rage and hatred when the Russians bombarded the biggest pediatric hospital in Ukraine, killing dozens just weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Nobody says anything about it. And this is just the new anti-Semitism. So with all the hate, what Eve and Jill are asking us, how should we approach our allies? Those necessarily, not necessarily who are Jews, but could be, Jill was talking about the interfaith, or what do we do? How do we engage them? Is this part of the work of Stand With Us? How do we, maybe webinars with them, maybe work, non-Jewish supporters, individuals, groups? Is there a strategy to convince these people, or to basically let them join us in support?
To encourage them, right? To encourage them to join us. So just so everybody knows, there are plenty of allies who love the state of Israel and who are right by our side, but may not be as vocal as we would like them to be. So this is the time when we're asking our friends, we ask them on social media. I made a videotape about this. I'm asking, we're asking, if you care about the state of Israel, if you can see this injustice on college campuses against Jewish students, if you can see what's going on, speak up. We need you now. So on one hand, I'm asking from the bottom of my heart, if you care about Israel, and Israel is important to everybody, it is the birthplace for Jesus Christ, for our Christian allies. It's so important. I know that our Hindu allies view Israel as an important, significant place. And they are with us. We just need everybody to be a little bit more vocal now, because it's unclear. It's not always as clear as it could be or should be. Now, I should say that before October 7th, somebody in Chicago, her name is Peggy Shapiro, she made it a priority and really invented our interfaith work at Stand With Us. She reached out to our Hindu allies, and she reached out to our Black American allies and Christian allies, and she's been doing a lot of work in this arena. And I'm very, very proud of her and very blessed. We are very blessed to have her on our team. And that work continues. So this is part of her job now. That's what she does. And she mentors other staff members across the world to do similar things, to reach out to our allies, to host events together. Hey, I'd like to just remind everybody that if you happen to do you're hosting a Jewish event, a Shabbat dinner, a holiday at your home, and you know people who aren't Jewish, invite them, have them over, let them join you. There's nothing more powerful than sharing traditions, nothing more powerful than building relationships. So I'm reminding everybody, this is a beautiful way, one by one, or invite 5 people at a time, to you personally take that role and reach out and build those relationships. It couldn't be more important.
Just following, do a lot of interfaith work in the Mid-Atlantic region. Yair, when he organized a large rally in December, I know that it was so important to have interfaith allies there and speaking out and speaking up. And that made a big difference. There was Pastor Ken from a church. There was the very close friend of mine, the director of the Hindu American Foundation, who spoke. She also joined us. We did a Stand With Us reception afterwards. She joined us, and her words were so powerful. She talked really specifically about how important the connection between Hindus and Jews are. And we have done with her in the past webinars and in-person presentations, including one at Adath Israel about 1.5 years ago, where we talked about those similarities. In fact, we even have a booklet called 10 Things That Jews and Hindus Have in Common. So I think identifying allies, finding that common ground, and getting together to learn about each other, whether it's through, as Roz mentioned, whether it's through inviting them to a Shabbat table, sharing food, sharing recipes, celebrating our traditions and our holidays together. This is the time, and you should do it with pride and with your Judaism on full display. One thing that I think that we have potentially done in the past is we've sort of left our own problems by the wayside in an effort to grow these kinds of relationships. But we have to be very honest about the challenges we are facing as well. So that's just something I would keep in mind. In Pittsburgh, we're doing a Night for Israel with 5 churches on September 22nd. Churches organized it. We are the co-sponsor, and they are out there. They are looking for it. We will have representation at the Christians United for Israel conference coming up this weekend. And we actually have a Christian outreach director who specifically engages pro-Israel Christian students on campus, developing their leadership skills in a very similar way to our Emerson fellows on our campuses. So we're really proud of the interfaith work that we do. So thank you.
One more thing, Julie, I want to add. We're very well known for our materials. So if you go to standwithus.com/booklets, there are booklets there that you can share with allies. You could order from Stand With Us, and we'll send you, 10 things everybody should know about October 7th, 10 things everybody should know about Israel. These educational little booklets are great to share, and they're simple, and they remind everybody of what's important about the issues that we're discussing now.
Thank you, Roz. So going back, I'm just asking a question from Deborah. Going back to campus a little bit, how did you recognize that universities, campuses were ground zero for the kind of work that Stand With Us does? What sort of stuck out to you that made you start to work on campuses almost immediately when Stand With Us was founded?
That is such a great question. It was a surprise. So at the very beginning of Stand With Us, we thought about 2 things that needed immediate attention. One was the media and holding media accountable, especially Los Angeles Times, New York Times. Of course, that battle goes on all the time. There's no end to that battle. But holding the media accountable was going to be a big agenda for us. The second one was to show support for the state of Israel and the people of Israel. So we got out on the streets. We started having rallies, just, Israel, we support you. And so we started hosting these rallies. I'll never forget when the Passover massacre happened at the hotel in Netanya, the Park Hotel. 17,000 people showed up in Los Angeles in front of the federal building. So we started really with those 2 agenda items, and we opened up an office locally here in Los Angeles. And so as our name grew, as our popularity grew, as Stand With Us, and it became international very quickly, students from college campuses started to approach us. So it was not our intention to go to the college campus. What happened was they came to us. And I will just tell you that in Southern California, the students who first came to us said, Roz, you have to come and see this. You must come and see what we're seeing. And I said, look, I understand it's bad. No, they literally forced me to go and take a look at what they were seeing on their college campuses. So I went to UC Irvine, UCLA, Northridge, Long Beach, Riverside. I went to all the local Southern California college campuses. And what I saw was appalling. And it was very similar in all the campuses. So there was something going on. It was a little, it was clear that it was fishy. So for example, a anti-Israel, anti-Semitic speaker would be booked on all the campuses. So the same person would go from one campus to the next, and there would be these groups that would receive them. And it was the same everywhere we went. And it was appalling. It was appalling language. It reminded me, as a daughter of survivors, it reminded me of what must have happened in Europe before the Holocaust, where you have terrible language, about Israel, like bloody flags with coffins on the floor. This was 23 years ago. This was not since October. So everybody should rest assured that This is an old problem. So that is how. It was not that Stand With Us was so smart and started going out on the college campuses. It was that students brought Stand With Us into the college campus. And everything evolved from there. We realized that, oh my God, these kids mean well, but our side, our kids that love Israel and are Jewish or not Jewish and they love Israel, have absolutely no preparation, no idea how to deal with all the onslaught that they were seeing. They didn't know how to educate their friends. They couldn't answer the accusations that they were getting about nonsense, Israel's apartheid. Well, they didn't even know what the word meant. So we had to like take a few steps back and start very quickly catching up with a situation where the kids really didn't have the background to be able to deal with all this brand new anti-Semitism on the campus.
And I think I remember watching 2004's Columbia Unbecoming. And that was such an eye-opener for me. I started doing showings in my home, bringing people to my house saying, can you believe what's happening at Columbia University? This was 20 years ago. And at the time, people said, well, that's just Columbia, right? There just was an incident at Berkeley. There was just something. And we wanted to downplay it and believe that it was limited as long as we stayed away from, as long as we kept it over there, it would go away. And that was, I think, a way for many people to keep their blinders on. And we just don't have that luxury anymore. And that's how we know that it didn't start on October 7th. This is decades in the making, and thank God for Stand With Us. Thank God for the work that we're doing. So, it's been a long time coming.
That's right.
Before the next question, I just wanted you mentioned something, Roz, that this is something personal because it reminded me. You were talking about Hotel Park in Netanya many years ago, 20-something years ago, that on Passover. And I'll just share with you that I'm from Netanya, and my whole family was gathering. We don't have a big family, also Holocaust survival family members, and we all gathered. And it just so happens that we live maybe, I don't know, half a mile from the Hotel Park, and we're all singing and Man Ishtana, the kids, and fun. And suddenly, boom, a huge blast, and it shook the whole windows and everything. And that was the time of piguim and blasts, one after buses exploding. And I remember that we're all like stopped for a second and we're like praying. Maybe it's just an airplane that made a boom or something. We're praying. And then, but 2 minutes later, I'll never forget it. The ambulance started going like crazy. And then we heard the horrible news about the massacre. It's still, till today, it chills my heart. When I walk on by the beach on the sea, and I see it's still there, but it never really recovered, Hotel Park. And it's just a testimony for this Jew hatred. And
Yair, did you ever walk into the Park Hotel to see the damage?
Not immediately, but actually the night after the Seder, everybody went to sleep. I was so, distraught. And I just walked there and saw the fire and the damage, and it was awful.
I only ask because that summer after the Park Hotel, I led a mission to Israel, and one of the stops we made was into the Park Hotel. So that summer, they still hadn't done anything. They didn't fix the room. And I actually walked into that very room that was exploded like that. And I'll never forget it. I can see it like it was yesterday. It was just unbelievable. And so many people died that night while they were in the middle of a Seder. It's just tragic that it's tragic. The suicide bomber that did that there's even a concept of suicide bomber. You would think that people would understand that even the concept of being a suicide bomber, somebody had to teach you that. What kind of extremism is that? It should make it very clear that we have a problem between civilization and terrorism. But again, everything is always twisted and turned around against us. Well, there must be a reason. There must be a reason for October 7th. No, there's no reason. There's no reason for terrorism. Anyways, I digress. But anyways,
it's really interesting what you're saying, and what you've been saying. Both of you have been talking about. I just have to make one more comment. we really have to recognize, all of us have to wake up in face of this anti-Semitism. And I told Julie and I told many people on this call that my Savta, my grandmother, she's still alive. She's 96. And she was a teenager in Hungary when all this, and people started feeling it kind of gradually, the flags, the blood, the swastikas, the hate. My grandmother was 12 years old. She remembers it. She tells me until today that kids started harassing her and teachers didn't care. And and businesses and even hospitals or medical, and they felt it, but they were like, yeah, it's a wave, it's going to get worse, it's going to get better. That's how anti-Semitism. So they didn't really fight back, and not to blame them, of course, because it was awful. And eventually, but the next thing she knows that she's in Auschwitz, losing her whole family, and she's still lucid to today. And she talks to me about anti-Semitism, that no, we can't accept it. We have to fight back in every way that you can, which is why what you're doing is so, admirable. But
well, Yair, I just want to say that your poor grandmother, like my parents, they didn't really have the strength or the support to be able to stand up the way that we can. When teachers and police and everybody that's supposed to help you doesn't help you. When Jews are taken in the street and harmed and people just look on, we would hope that this is a different time and that we have the strength and we have the support and to be able to stand up. That being said, we were very disappointed that the administrations on the universities didn't do more this last year to help our students, whether they were Jewish. Mainly the Jewish students suffered greatly, or non-Jewish Zionists who tried to stand up. There was a real gap between what was going on and the response from the administrations. So hopefully, as we open school in this coming year, it will be different. Hopefully, this behavior that was tolerated last year will not be tolerated.
So Roz, just as a follow-up to your question, we have Shir Toledo here. Shir is a student and an activist, and she's been amazing in the last year. Literally, as Israeli, she's also American. She's a student at Haverford College in Pennsylvania, and she talks openly about the horrors that people are seeing there in terms of the explosion of anti-Semitism in that specific college. What Shir wants to know, or she's asking, is how can students like herself or others in that campus, other campuses, how can they be, now that the year is about to start soon, university, more involved with Stand With Us? Are there any events for college students or ways for them to be more, volunteer or do anything to collaborate and enhance your work?
So first of all, it's super important for everybody to find out more about Stand With Us, because we're an organization that, is here for these issues. Julie said before that if you have a problem, you can fill out an incident report on our website, legal@standwithus.com, and let us know what's going on for you. We are very busy making sure that students are protected. You should know your rights. We have a booklet called Know Your Rights, and encourages you to document everything. But we have divided Canada and the United States. I'm only talking now about North America. We have other things going on in the rest of the world, but let's focus on North America for a moment. We've divided all the area into regions, and there is a campus manager and a high school manager in all the different regions. So we can actually help you. We can connect you with your local campus or high school manager, and you can talk through what's going on your campus. You might even be able to participate in programming. We can give you funding, we can give you support, we can give you advice, we can connect you to an attorney. You just have to reach out to Stand With Us. We're here, and this is what we do for a living. So we're ready and willing to help you. This is what we want to be doing.
And from a hyper local perspective, specifically relating to Haverford, Haverford is probably the worst campus that we see in the Mid-Atlantic region. We know that there are tremendous problems there. you can immediately today connect with our senior campus regional manager. His name is Dimas Gueco. I'm going to put his email into the chat. You can reach out to him, tell him that you want to get involved, find out what kinds of programs we already have going on there. I know we're very close with the Chabad rabbi at Haverford. Reach out, say you'd like to be, if you're not, obviously you're not going to be involved with our fellowship this coming year, but we also have programs for students virtually. We have a semester-long program, first of all, for freshmen, for first-year students, called First Year Leadership Internship. It's a semester-long program where we train our students. And then we have our Emerson Fellowship for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And that's really our top-tier program. Even if you're not involved with either of those programs, there are so many other ways that we can work with you to bring programming to your campus, to help to support you, and to do anything we can to be both proactive and reactive in our responses. So I'm going to put that into the chat, and then you can feel free to reach out to him directly, or you can contact me and I can put you in touch with him. It's important to note, in case you're not aware on this call, that tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning at the state capitol, there is a campus anti-Semitism hearing in front of the State Education Board. We have students from several universities who are speaking. We have a few Hillel directors who will also be there on site to present their experiences. And we had students submit testimony, really, really heartbreaking testimony from schools like Penn and Lehigh and other places. So it is really, really important for you to speak up, to be proactive and responsive. And so I want to just make sure that everyone feels comfortable knowing that we have the tools available. We'll see what comes out of this hearing. It won't be super similar to what we saw in DC, because there will not be any administrators present, but at least students will have the opportunity to use their voices to speak up and to share their own personal experiences on campuses, and where administrators may have helped or may potentially have failed in their duties to protect them on campus. So someone had asked a question about K-12. Can you be involved in K-12 in the grassroots effort, similar to the American Jewish Medical Association? I can speak very briefly and say that yes, our K-12 grassroots effort is open to everyone. I'm going to throw the link to register into the chat. Please sign up for that. Roz, if you want to add anything else about our K-12 network and ethnic studies, you can maybe be a good chance to do that now.
I would just say that this is a new area, new-ish area, and it should be on everybody's radar. This was born out of a good thing. People really wanted to study about different ethnicities and minorities. But when this was hijacked in such a way so that it becomes an opportunity to discriminate against Jews, to leave out the Jewish story, to say bad things about Israel in curriculum, then we have quite a bad surprise. So thank you for wanting to be involved. We have elaborated this department K through 12, and so we're working hard in this arena. And Julie just put up the link, so we would love for you to be involved. If you're a teacher or a parent, it's an important area to get involved.
And Julie will also send one more thing, share one more thing in the chat, which is really the legal report. She's going to mention it in a second, but I wanted to ask you one more question. There's a lot of questions, and we're definitely not going to get to all of them, but just as a follow-up to what we talked about, the campuses and the encampments and the anti-Semitism. So Julie Myers is asking that you mentioned, Roz, you're mentioning that hopefully things will improve with the college administrators soon, now that the kids are going to go back to the campuses. So her question is, what has changed to make you, Roz, feel that things are going to be a little bit better this year versus the awful things that we have seen before?
It's an important question. Well, I heard there was a change in leadership, for example, at UCLA. I know that there are a number of lawsuits out there. Some of them are ours. A lot of them are ours. And, you know, I think Julie is going to load up our most recent legal report so you could see. Julie, is this the one, everything since October 7th? that you're
Yeah, I'm
gonna-
seeing if I'm able to put it into the chat. It's a PDF, so I'm
Okay.
going to see if I can add
Okay.
it in. If not, we'll follow up with it afterwards.
Or I think it's also on our website, on the legal website. So it's right at the top there on the legal page. Things will change because this is a moment in time where, look, imagine it's easy for an administrator not to respond and not to do anything, because if you do something, maybe the people who feel exactly the opposite, the anti-Israel people, will start putting pressure on you. If you do something for them, then the Jewish groups that are very upset already will come after you. So isn't it easier to just do nothing? Well, that's what a lot of people, a lot of administrations tried this last year, to do nothing. And so many Jewish students felt unsafe and felt that they were not being heard and felt at risk. And so that did not work. That does not work. Doing nothing does not work. So there are a number of lawsuits, as I said. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of letters that have gone to universities, as Julie mentioned earlier. There's a lot of pressure right now to do the right thing. And Jewish students and Zionist students who are not Jewish understand that there's a big umbrella of groups like Stand With Us, and Stand With Us is a big one, that provides safety. It's a big safety net, and they realize that they should be together right now. So for example, we're not telling students to go it alone, to go to their universities and just tough it out alone. This is a time when everybody needs to be together for safety and for a bigger voice. So Stand With Us is an umbrella for that safety, and we will continue to crank up that pressure so that Jewish students can feel safe on campus. That's why I know.
There's one more question from I think we're going to have to wrap up, but I am interested in asking your question because, many of us are so worried. There's the campus center, all the things that you talked about, but still the biggest concern as somebody who has two very young kids at home is the school, K to 12, all the propaganda that, affects the teachers. So Jill is asking, has there been involvement of Stand With Us? Have they been speaking with school board meetings, for example, in the country, and being directly involved in that structure of school board?
So I can speak about my personal experience. So we work as closely with school boards as possible. Oftentimes those relationships are born out of our connections with parents. So one example I can give locally is with the Lower Merion School District. In December, I think it was December 21st, right before winter break, there was a controversial editorial that was printed in the Lower Merion school newspaper, written by a high school student, approved by a teacher, and put into the publication. I think it was a day before the winter break started. The Jewish community, the parents had already started gathering, but really they were in the initial stages, and they brought to us the issue. We immediately started working with the superintendent at the time, along with the director of our Center for Combating Anti-Semitism, to talk about some of the ways that Jewish students were affected by an editorial that almost directly put them in harm's way in many ways with the words that were used, made them feel less safe. We worked with high school administrators, we worked with the principals, and we brought contemporary anti-Semitism and Jewish identity training to the school. So our leaders, my colleagues came into the school, met with faculty, met with the superintendent, and we worked with them to better explain how they can lower the temperature in the school and also create a safe and secure environment for Jewish students and for all students. We did a very similar thing in Upper Dublin, and have had a lot of success in other districts in the area in helping to train them to better understand who we are and why hate against Jews looks so different than hate against other underrepresented minorities. And so for us, that's a proactive way. In this case, it was responsive, but also proactive, that we can help to be more supportive of administrators. Same thing goes for school boards. We encourage school boards to adopt IRA. IRA is our International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. Almost immediately, the Lower Merion District adopted IRA. we want to see as many places as possible adopt IRA. So we also encourage people to show up at school board meetings, to run for open school board seats, to make sure that your voice is also heard and represented. One other last example I'll give has to do with ethnic studies. Ethnic studies at its core sounded like a really nice idea, teaching history from different perspectives, making sure that all voices are represented. Unfortunately, what we found, particularly with liberated ethnic studies, is an overwhelming anti-Jewish bias, anti-Israel bias within ethnic studies curriculums. In fact, we have several legal actions against districts that have continued to perpetuate these stereotypes and this bias against Jews. I myself found out through our research department that my children's local school district had mandated ethnic studies for high school students. I have 2 high schoolers. I found out that they were looking for volunteers to join a committee to be part of selecting the next curriculum of what our seniors in high school would study when it comes to ethnic studies. I spent 1 year on a committee, monthly at least, talking through, meeting with different leaders of these curriculums that popped up everywhere, asking the questions: how do you present the Jewish community? Do you talk about Zionism? Do you talk about Israel? We got access to their curriculums as a result of our connections. We were able to evaluate these curriculums and see where they may fall short in providing really a comprehensive look at who the Jewish community is and what anti-Semitism is, and for sure what Israel is. We were able to update several curriculums as a result. They selected a curriculum. We are working with them on making sure, and we will hold them accountable. But if I didn't hear about from my research department that this ethnic studies board was being formed, I might have never known that it was happening. So that's another way that we really encourage parents to keep your eyes and ears open. And when there's an opportunity to volunteer, even though you're working and it's hard and you're tired and you want to be with your family, consider signing up. If we all do a little bit, it takes a load off the few of us from carrying that. So it's really just important to know what your district is doing and how you can become involved as a parent so that your voice is represented and that Jewish representation is happening anywhere where conversations around diversity is happening.
Very good. I just want to add that this is a symbol of everything. So this have your antennas up right now, it applies to everything that we're looking at. Every discipline, unfortunately, every profession. So just know you're not alone. And there's probably an umbrella group that you could join. And if there isn't, contact us and maybe we can connect you to those who we've heard from also in your field. But just know that there are answers to this issue and that you're not alone. And this is a time for activism. This is a time for us to unite and say no to unreasonable anti-Semitism in the way that we're looking at it these days.
Listen, it's been a fascinating hour and 15 minutes and we're at time. So I really wanted to thank Roz for joining us, and I hope that your residual COVID will go away in a day or two and you're going to be back 100% to normal. And
Thank
this
you.
is really fascinating to me, and it's really, thank God for having Stand With Us and people like you who are helping. This is what we need. We need these antennas and activism and, you know, the community to wake up with leadership like yourselves. And so thank you so much, Roz. This was fascinating. Thank you for creating Stand With Us and for all that you're doing. And Julie, what can I say? I love you. I think that we've been working together for a year, and you're awesome. And it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much. Any other last comments, Julie?
For me, I just want to say to you both that you are exemplary of exactly what's needed now, the activism. We could not have built a movement called Stand With Us without people like Yair and Julie. This is what it takes now, and we're here. We need everybody to join us and say, Hineni, I am here for the task at hand. Thank you all in advance for your involvement.
The last thing I would say is, if you want to keep in touch, please join our mailing list. You can go to standwithus.com, scroll to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a subscribe now. We send out a weekly newsletter. It has all of the information you could ever imagine that you'll need to know. It has really important action items for you to take advantage of. And it helps us to stay connected with you. So please consider joining our mailing list. Connect with me directly. Yair knows how to get in touch with me afterwards. He can share my email address. you have ideas for programs, if you want to bring something to your synagogue, your kid's school, or any other way, your campus, we will help you do that. And also, don't assume that we know what's going on. Make sure to reach out to me, fill out an incident report form, and then we can help. But without the information and without your involvement and your bravery in standing up, you can't know that we know what's happening or at all times. So we're here to support you. We're here to help you. So thank you.
And join us on social media.
Yeah.
We make it easy for you. You can educate your world just using our messaging.
Well, toda rabba. This is amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. And we will be in touch. Hopefully, we can have another meeting like this and keep on the amazing work. Laila Tov,
Thank you.
everybody.
Laila Tov,
Oops.
thank you.